Hey there, and welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a parent coach, and a speech therapist. And today I have Debra Brause with me. Debra, welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be
I'm so happy you're here. You are a clinical psychologist. And so I want you to tell the people what that means for you, because there's lots of different ways to be that.
Yeah, well, I work in a private practice. So I'm in Los Angeles. I see lots of teens, young adults, older adults, tons of parents who have neurodivergent children. I've got a few autistic adults, lots of ADHDers. I was trained psychodynamically, which means kind of looking at unconscious processes, looking at childhood attachment styles and what we call object relations, which is relationships with our family dynamics and how those kind of create patterns over a lifetime and how we interact with ourselves and with others. And so just do some depth work with people. And I love it.
You're bumping up right against immediately, not against, but to the topic that we're going to talk about today, which I am going to give the clinical name just because I feel like people like to Google things and I like to Google things, which is this process called projective identification. Do I have that right?
You do.
Okay. What does that mean and why is it important for people who are raising neurodivergent, complicated orchid kids?
Yeah, so projective identification is it's a natural process. We all do it. It's something that was coined by Melanie Klein, who is a very famous psychoanalyst out of Britain. And she, I believe, initially identified it as the distress signals that the baby puts into the mother so that the mother can then attune and empathize with what the baby's needs are and respond. So it's how we pick up kind of emotional signals from others. How it shows up often in our lives is between couples, between parents and children. It's when there are parts of us that we do not like, whether they're thoughts, feelings, people that we've internalized, aspects of people like our parents that we've taken in that we want to get rid of. So we're feeling uncomfortable or insecure or deficient in some way. We project that feeling into someone else nearby and they have to take it up, right? It's a pure projection is like you just get rid of it. A projective identification is where there's then pressure on that other person to identify with what you've just projected and to sort of embody that. And so it's a cycle. And it happens all the time.
So I want you to give an example. Maybe do it between like married or like partners, but then also children. Can you give us 2 examples of how that might happen?
Yeah. So with partners, okay, let's say, okay, so I have a couple, actually, they're both autistic. The woman comes from a culture, it was, they were immigrants. There's a lot of pressure to keep up with everybody, to impress, to grow, a lot of comparisons. And so it starts with her mother. Her mother will come in and say, you need a bigger house. When are you moving? Right.
Oh, this and is like her mother will literally come to her house and tell her this.
Literally say that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Keep going.
Because the house is not big enough for the mother's taste and, showing off what her daughter's accomplished. So then the daughter internalizes that as shame. My house isn't good enough. I'm not good enough. Right. And then we'll say to her husband, we need a bigger house. Right. I don't like this house. Right now, it's like a hot potato. So now she's just projected it into him. Right. You're not good enough. Now you're not a good enough provider. I'm feeling inadequate because my mother just put that into me. Now I'm going to make you feel inadequate. Right. And now he's holding it. He feels terrible. So now he projects something right back at her, which is, I don't like how you communicate. You just said that wrong. What's going on with you? Like he doesn't take it and explore it. He has to sort of throw it right back at like, there's something wrong with how you tell me things, which maybe that's true, but it's sort of like bouncing around this really shame potato that's sort of traveling from one person to another.
Wait, pause though. I love this idea of the shame potato, the shame hot potato.
Never
Yeah,
said that
because
before.
so often, I think it should be a thing. So often, what we're doing is offloading discomfort,
Yeah,
internal discomfort that we are unwilling, unable, unsafe to process, feel, deal with ourselves. And we're like,
exactly.
okay, all I got to do is put this onto somebody else. This is not a conscious process. If it were, we wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
Right. But it's like, it's an attempt to self-regulate.
Yeah, makes us feel better
It makes
to
us
get it
feel better
out.
in the
Yeah,
moment. Yeah.
in the moment. Right.
And then we're
Well, it comes right back
relying,
at you.
it comes right back at you. And then we're
Mhm.
relying on other people, which inevitably, of course, doesn't work, because as soon as, and this is something we teach in our Raising Orchid Kids classes all the time, right? Other people's behavior is other people's business. It's actually not under your control.
Right.
But this is like, it's a little bit of a control strategy. Like, hey, you do something so I can feel better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're sort of unconsciously controlling another person's behavior in a way. You're making them feel, I mean, we always say we're responsible for our own behavior. You can't make someone feel something, but in a way, you can. So very subtly, if you're sort of coercing someone into feeling a certain way or shaming or critiquing them, they don't have to accept that. They can put up a boundary and push back, but that's hard to do. It takes a lot of self-awareness that, like, this is not mine, this is yours. And especially for a child, they might not be able to do that, right? So that's where it's most dangerous, because children who are absorbing these messages that there's something wrong with me because the parent feels like there's something wrong with them, and then they're letting that go into the child, that's where it can be, so much harm can be done.
Yeah. So give us an example of, like, right, exactly. So we've talked about sort of parent couples.
Yeah.
So that's a relationship among equals. Now, not everybody has the same level of emotional intelligence or experience with whatever we're talking about, but okay, at least psychologically speaking, cognitively speaking, they're on par,
Right.
or have the potential to be
Right.
so. In a parent-child
Yeah.
dynamic, you've
Yeah.
got an uncooked brain
Exactly.
on the part of the child, and a brain
Yeah.
that is, and you can tell me whether this is true or not, in the coaching, on the coaching side of things, we say, basically until age 6, kids are just sponges. They are accepting their reality as it's presented to them, and
Yeah.
not at all engaged in any kind of critical analysis of, like, oh, my mother is upset because her father is dying, and that's why she's not putting me to bed tonight. That gets
Right.
internalized as, there's something wrong with me because my mom's not here to tuck me in. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I love there's a guy named Fairbairn, who is an older psychoanalyst, who talked about that process, how the child and why the child blames themselves. And it's a matter of control, right? If I'm in a situation where my parents are bad, let's say, and that's a terrible word, but they're not meeting my needs in some way, I'm really screwed, right? So I'm in a situation that I have no control over. I'm completely dependent on these people, and there's nothing I can do about it. So in order to protect myself, I need to believe that it's me. I'm the one who's bad. I'm the one who's screwed up. If I can change something, maybe my circumstances will change. So it becomes a way to regain control of something and believe that we can shift the situation in some way. If it's us, that's the problem. But you see how later on, if we always believe it's us and nothing in the environment is problematic, it's always our fault, that causes right, of not being critical thinkers about maybe being in unhealthy relationships, and then imagining, oh, well, it must be me. I need to be better, right? We end up in repeating these dynamics with people who might not be good for us, and we just take it all on instead of questioning whether that's a healthy relationship. So it's a survival strategy as a kid, but then it becomes really damaging later.
And it strikes me as you're talking, it's a little bit the inverse of what we were just talking about, right? Where we're like, now we're internally, we're sort of projecting everything onto ourselves.
Right.
But let's talk, I'm going to try to get back to parents and children. And one of the reasons I love these conversations is because we get to go on tangents and then come back.
Yeah,
Or not.
definitely. We'll go wherever you want.
Exactly. So, but so parents and kids, particularly when we've got children who with any kind of neurodivergence or really any kind of birth, neurological, medical issue, we come, most of us, to parenthood as something that just happens. Like in life, you know, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you become a parent. Most people have not put very much more thought into it than that. Some have, but even the ones who have, right? I want to have this kind of birth in this kind of location, and I want to have this kind of baby shower, and I want to have this kind of bed and this kind of crib. And now baby's here, and baby is not acting like we thought.
Yeah.
And 4-year-old is definitely not acting like we thought.
Yeah.
And 16-year-old is not acting like we thought. So what's happening there?
Yeah. So, right. The more, I think, rigid view we had of who our child was going to be, and the more stuck we are on that, the more it's going to be difficult to be flexible around who our child actually is. So a parent who maybe had a lot of insecurity or shame growing up around who they were, and then they have this image they're going to have the perfect baby, and that baby is going to be like this representation of them and how wonderful they are. And then you have a baby who ends up being neurodivergent, disabled in some way. I have a couple like this where there's a lot of depression around discovering the baby's diagnosis. This was all of a sudden like trying to accept who this baby is, because they were not this perfect kind of symbol of what they had thought they were creating. Can see how important it is to do your own work around your own childhood stuff and your own grieving, so that your child is not holding that for you, right? Because the baby's, go ahead.
This is so unconscious. It's really, and part of the reason this podcast is called Complicated Kids is because when things are going well, we don't realize how, in this case, how complicated human interaction is. How complicated, and like child development is like a whole other complicated set of businesses, right?
Yeah.
But we don't realize until something goes wrong how many threads make up the fabric of any human life, of any human interaction.
Yeah.
And so again, we come to this like, oh, I'd like to have this and I'd like to have that. And then reality is not meeting our expectations, and something's got to give in that situation. And so one of the things that gives is this projection where we're now projecting all of the things that we don't like, either about the tiny human in front of us, but mostly because it's mirroring something about ourselves, our own vulnerability, our own lack of sense of worthiness, perfection.
Any insecurity that we have and aren't conscious of, and sort of owning and accepting that it's okay. We all have vulnerabilities, we all have flaws. It's about loving ourselves, warts and all, that we can kind of do that work ourselves about, self-compassion. If we're not doing that kind of work and we have to get rid of those negative feelings we have, then anyone in your orbit is kind of in trouble in terms of who's going to pick that up for you. So, on the other hand, I mean, it's also transgenerational, right? So that probably happened to you from your own parents, where they got rid of parts of themselves that they weren't comfortable with. You're holding that for them. Right now, you have the opportunity to be a different parent and give your child, have them be the child that you didn't get to be. They get to be sort of free of all these projections if you're doing that self-awareness work and recognizing that this is your stuff, right? So I
went to see a comedian, and he talked about heirlooms and baggage.
Okay.
And I thought that was such an interesting way to talk about intergenerational trauma on the
I love
baggage
that.
part, and like
Yes. Treasure.
and treasure. Exactly.
Yeah. All the
Yeah.
good stuff you get too. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I just thought that was super interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, so this notion of, okay, right, something is we get the shame hot potato.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even know we're holding that shame hot potato. We're just
Yeah.
because we're strategizing around it.
Uh-huh.
And this is how I
Yeah.
actually think of this. Is so all of us are handed something from our ancestors, whether we want to or not. And like I
Yeah.
tell my children this all the time, you're going to talk to your therapist or your coach about different things than the things that I talk to my therapist about.
Yes.
But we all have to do this, right? We're humans.
Yeah.
We have all of these aspects that come up, and some of them
Yeah.
are not so nice, and we prefer to resist them as long as possible
Right.
until we no longer can.
Yeah.
For most people, many people, I won't say most people, but many people, having a child who is complicated is
Yeah.
that watershed moment where all of their strategies, all their coping mechanisms, all their whatevers are no longer
Yeah.
working.
Right.
And then you
I
are
mean,
looking at it.
yeah. Our son, so he's 17 now, but he was born with significant birth trauma, right? He was early by 6 weeks. My water broke, and then he got stuck. So he lost oxygen. There was 20 minutes of resuscitation. And we had no idea from day one, what this was going to look like. There were all kinds of diagnoses being thrown out. There was cerebral palsy and, different things nobody knew. And so every step has been kind of learning about who he is and what that means. And, not knowing prognosis. I mean, he's doing amazing in many, many ways. But it's, reorienting yourself to who is this human and how do we not try to make them something that they're not, right? Like one thing I was thinking about this weekend, because he loves to be on screens, right? And I know that's a trigger for a lot of parents, but I grew up in a family where you had to be busy all the time, and that might have been self-imposed. I don't know, but I was definitely like, the minute I heard someone was coming home, I was busy. I was doing something. I was cleaning. I was working. I was doing my homework. And even now, if I hear, not that I'm lounging around, but if I hear my husband coming home, I'm on him doing something, because I'm not going to be caught dead watching television or relaxing, God forbid. And my son, all he wants to do is watch television, right? And I'm not saying that that's great, but I have to be mindful of his nervous system. I'm so scared of burnout because I just keep hearing stories about autistic burnout, and it terrifies me.
Mm.
And so I don't want to push him. I know that school is exhausting, and I want to let him do what he needs to do to take care of himself. But I have to be very mindful of not putting my values and my own baggage around being a productive, person in a capitalist world onto my son, who doesn't need to be the same way. He needs to be his own person, taking care of himself and checking in with himself. So
That challenge, though, right? Of I don't need to be projecting and I think what you said, something like my values, which maybe aren't really your values, it's mostly your history just coming out to play.
Right.
And so there's an automaticity to some of what we do, to a lot of what we do as humans and as parents, that that by necessity must go, I happen to think, particularly when we have neurodivergent children, because they can't just go along to get along. I mean, you're super conscious of burnout. You're not wanting that to happen to his nervous system. So you're creating this bubble around your nervous system, around his nervous system, while also acknowledging what that's doing to you, which is pushing that little button of people should be productive. People should be productive.
Right.
But that conflict is yours to resolve.
Exactly.
Is to solve for.
Exactly. Right. So it's me noticing it, seeing my own activation around watching him watch TV and what that brings up for me, right? And trying to take note of what my assumptions are about my spiraling into the future. And this is going to be him in 20 years, going to sit in front of a television all day. Like, it's just getting into a mindfulness place about this is what's happening right now. This is what he needs right now. I don't need to impose my expectations. Doesn't mean he shouldn't have any expectations, but it reminds me of parents who are dealing with like a low demand parenting approach because they need to, because their kids are demand avoidant, and they might have come from a high demand culture or family. And now they have to let go of all these demands they put on their kids and what that stirs up, and the resentment or the fear, and it's so much to hold, but it's ours to process and deal with. Like, this is who we are, what we thought we had to do, and it's not who they are.
Yeah, but it's not for the faint of heart. So for anyone listening who's like, oh, I might need to do some of this, don't do this by yourself. Don't try this at home.
Right.
Get a therapist, get a coach, get a friend to listen to you sort of talk through. I actually love coaching for this, for people who are like operational in the world, who are just trying to solve, like, why do I feel so icky all the time? And I'm making other people feel icky. But it is, number one, work worth doing. And then particularly as kids get older, there are natural things that happen that nobody, as far as I can tell, talks about, except if you're like reading about parenting teens, which you will be at some point,
right?
Because the game changes very dramatically, which is they're requiring more independence. Some of their brain that wasn't online is coming online more than ever, and sometimes not. Right. And then we're coming into more of this consultant role, which is going to kick up all kinds of stuff about what kind of parent we think we are also. So, like, right, in the same way that you're like, okay, my son is 17 years old, he has a hard day at school, he, logically, like, he needs to relax, and the way that he relaxes is he watches TV. Not my choice, not my favorite, but that's his choice, and his choice is valid, and also he's old enough. So there's all of that stuff happening all simultaneously.
And letting go of control. It's so hard. You have so much control over when they're little and you're dictating everything, right? And as they get older and want to make their own choices, and being able to let go and not be driven by fear, but driven by possibility and kind of openness to letting them guide the way. And it's this delicate balance between where you need to put kind of guardrails on and where you want them to have as few as possible and be able to explore their own freedom. And that's tricky when they're, not very safety conscious, let's say, or not as independent as they would like to think they are, and I know there's a difference between independence and autonomy. Like, we all need other people and we all need support. And so that will always be there. But, some of the autonomous decisions he could make might not be the best for him. And I think that's so hard, because I know in the disability rights community, it's like they want the freedom to fail, right? Or the freedom to make their own choices, right? But where some of these are truly could be dangerous. So at least for my kids. So I think it's really juggling where to step in and where to
and that's real. I mean, when we are talking about, the health and safety concerns, even of somebody who, for example, has a language processing disorder, who's missing conversational cues on the fly. There's potential for real harm. The problem is not the problem, but the stickiness is like, okay, when is it okay for that person to fail? When, as a parent, am I going to, and everything is in air quotes, like, allow that to happen? Because of course I'm not allowing it to happen. It's happening, like, regardless of whether I'm participating or not. And then when am I going to step in? These are questions I know that, parents are asking themselves all the time. And There
Yeah.
aren't any good answers. And I think you spoke to something earlier, which is fear.
Uh-huh.
And Dick Schwartz, who's the creator of internal family systems. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love IFS. I have received, received the benefit of IFS, but I also love studying it, which is basically like we are all composed of these parts that
Yeah.
arose at various times in our life. They have various roles. I'm not going to get into it here, but the point being, now I lost the thread. What was it?
Let's see.
Yeah. Where am I going with this?
Control or letting
Control and
people.
fear. Thank
Okay.
you.
Uh-huh.
When we operate from fear, we are almost never operating from our wisest part, which
Yeah.
is again, Dick would call it the capital S of self.
Right.
When we are afraid of something, when we are doing something because we are afraid of an outcome, that can be a really good signal that, oops, I might have something to do here.
Yeah. There's something unworked out within us that is creating that fear, and that is maybe not grounded in reality, but grounded in some past trauma or something that we haven't quite identified yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know a little about IFS. I don't know the whole theory, but yeah, it seems to really resonate with neurodivergent people. It seems like just it's very depathologizing, and all those aspects of feeling like you're composed of different parts seems to really resonate. So I do want to learn more.
Yeah, it's totally worth doing. I would highly recommend it. But it is this, like, when we're trying to control other people's behavior from this, our own discomfort, our own fear, our own lack, our own shame.
Yeah.
It's like, I think more than anything, the thing I want people to take away from this conversation is like, what an opportunity.
Yeah, to do our own stuff, our own work.
Yeah, like that's your cue. Like, oh, it feels junky. Look within.
Right. I like that as a motto.
Right.
Feels junky, look within, bumper sticker.
Bumper sticker.
I mean, I think the opportunity too to turn that, like find where that shame piece is, or find where that discomfort is. And that's an opportunity to grieve, really. Like it's you can transform that into some form of mourning, that this is something that either wasn't lovable about you, or so you thought, or was something that was unaccepted in you, something that you're not proud of, like something you maybe didn't get, a need that went unmet. And then you can mourn that that was not something that was available to you, or it was not a part of you that was accepted. That's how you kind of work through that shame piece, the shame potato, and get to acceptance, right? The end of a grief process, ideally, is acceptance. So yeah, I think that's like the trigger is the way in to noticing, okay, this is where my work is.
Yeah, the trigger is the way in.
Yeah.
But don't do it by yourself at first.
Right. Ideally with a therapist.
Yeah. Ideally with a therapist, a coach, somebody.
Yeah. But there's always the mindfulness work, I think, is something that people can do. And being able to notice, I have a client who just started noticing, okay, when she comes in the door after work, she's all of a sudden really tense and uncomfortable, and was able to like actually put that together just by noticing moment to moment. Okay, I walk in the door, my mood shifts. Why is that? And her home as a child didn't feel comfortable for various reasons. But this is where the projective identification takes over. She walks in, she suddenly feels uncomfortable, and then she criticizes her partner, her child, someone who's there, gets rid of the uncomfortable feeling. Now they did something wrong, and she can sort of feel better. So, but just that first step of awareness, like, oh my God, okay, this is me. I walk in the house and I'm not feeling well. So how can I explore and be curious about that? Right? It's like, this isn't someone else's problem right now. This is me getting curious about my inner experience, and that's where the work is. And that's where it starts at least.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love it. Okay. If people want to learn more about you, we're going to put a pin in there.
Okay.
But if they want to learn more about you, your work, where should they look?
Yeah, well, I have a website, drdebrabrause.com. I have a Psychology Today blog. It's called Psychology Meets Neurodiversity. And I am on Instagram sporadically at Debra Brause. And that's pretty much it. I keep it simple.
Debra, Debra.
Yes.
So there you go.
And Brause is Brause. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll link to all of that in the show notes.
Okay.
What a pleasure. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's so fun.
So appreciate it.